This video was brought to you by Ground News. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has a strong claim to be the most popular leader in the democratic world. Now 7 months into her presidential term, her approval rating remains sky high, around 80%, making her even more popular than her popular predecessor. So in this video, we're going to take a look at why Claudia Sheinbaum enjoys such popularity, covering things like social spending, security policy, and of course, her handling of her northern neighbor, Donald Trump. We've just published a new issue of our official magazine, Too Long, which runs through the world's most influential people and how they wield their power. From Elon Musk's takeover to the power of Melee, or whether Jerome Powell can resist Trump. Read more by clicking the link in the description. Claudia Sheinbaum was already on pretty good footing when she was elected last year, with nearly 36 million votes, the highest number ever recorded for a candidate in Mexican history, and representing 61% of the vote. She's the political heir and successor of the popular leftist president Andrés Manuel López Obrador, or AMLO. Sheinbaum, a scientist by profession, was previously the head of the government of Mexico City and comes from the Mañanera party, founded by AMLO. So what has Sheinbaum's approval rating looked like since she took office last October? Through her first month in office, she enjoyed an approval rating in the low 70s, while about 26% disapproved. By mid-February though, Sheinbaum's approval had risen to 80%, the level at which it remains today, while her disapproval sits at 19%. Now, leading any country is a difficult job, not least Mexico, which faces significant security challenges and a trade war with its largest trading partner. On top of this, we often hear about a political shift towards the right in many parts of the world. So how is it that Sheinbaum, the left-wing president of Mexico, has had such strong approval? To answer the question, we're going to break it down into 3 areas: Sheinbaum's domestic policies, her handling of Trump, and her communication. So let's start with the domestic. The backbone of the Mañanera political project, first under AMLO and now Sheinbaum, is redistribution, via things like minimum wage hikes and social spending, particularly subsidies and direct cash transfers. This focus on targeting those less well off and lifting people out of poverty was a key driver of AMLO's popularity. In his 2018 to 2024 term, AMLO increased the minimum wage from about 88 pesos per day to 249 per day. Sheinbaum is continuing this project by pledging to increase minimum wage by around 12% each year, and this year's boost means that the purchasing power of the minimum wage has more than doubled, up 135% since 2018. This was done alongside significant increases in social spending for senior citizens, unemployed youth, disabled people, and others, meaning that the proportion of Mexicans benefiting from government-provided financial distributions rose to a record level during AMLO's presidency, and millions were lifted out of poverty. Sheinbaum is seeking to continue this legacy, maintaining and building on existing welfare programs. For example, by introducing a women's welfare pension for women aged 60 to 64. This social spending strategy is not without criticism though. Millions have indeed been lifted out of poverty, and social spending programs do cover more people. But at the same time, analysis shows that by 2024, compared to 2018, these programs are reaching fewer of Mexico's very poorest families, who actually ended up receiving a smaller portion of spending. On top of this, the increase in social spending has come alongside sizable cuts in other areas. Sheinbaum's 2025 budget, for example, sharply cuts departments including healthcare, defense, and the environment, with her aim of reducing the deficit. Nevertheless, the point still stands that, like AMLO before her, social spending programs are a key driver of her popularity. Public security is another policy area that Sheinbaum generally receives positive ratings for, but in this case, she is broken with her predecessor's approach. By the end of his term, only 28% approved of AMLO's handling of public security, while Sheinbaum's approach recorded 49% approval in March, and was even higher in February at 52%, which probably marked the first majority approval for the government's security strategy in 15 years. While she has talked about the importance of tackling the social roots of violent crime, Sheinbaum has carefully avoided using her predecessor's "hugs not bullets" catchphrase, and instead is pursuing a more confrontational policy against cartels and criminal organizations. Having halved the homicide rate in the capital city during her time leading it, Sheinbaum's strategy emphasizes civilian policing, bolstering the state's intelligence capabilities, and strategic actions targeted at so-called violence professionals, who are often the mid-ranking cartel members who plan, mobilize, and perpetrate violence against civilians. But pacifying the country is obviously a much larger challenge than she faced in Mexico City, and even then, lower murder rates sometimes disguise other forms of violence, like forced disappearances, which are a notorious issue in Mexico. Sheinbaum's approach to security ties closely with another area where the Mexican public rate her highly: her handling of Donald Trump, who has even praised her himself. Facing on and off again 25% tariffs, Mexico is particularly vulnerable to Trump's trade wars, as the two countries are heavily economically integrated, and exports to the US are a major engine of the Mexican economy. So Sheinbaum has employed a cool heads approach to Trump, offering pointed defenses of Mexico while avoiding direct confrontation with Trump, and working to appease him on certain issues. For example, by extraditing a number of drug cartel heavyweights to the US, reinforcing the border with 10,000 additional National Guard troops, and announcing record fentanyl seizures. One poll from March found that 68% of the public were confident in her approach towards Trump, while another found that this was her best achievement since taking office. But this positive reaction aside, the saga is still not over, and it remains to be seen if the impact of the now somewhat diluted tariffs on the Mexican economy filter through to Sheinbaum's approval rating. One final, and perhaps more nebulous reason for Sheinbaum's popularity is her communication. Sheinbaum has continued a tradition established by AMLO, the Mañanera, a press conference held every morning of every weekday. Despite nominally being a press event, the Mañanera helped AMLO bypass potential media gatekeeping, and served as something of a direct and unfiltered line of dialogue with the public. This morning show is not a bog-standard press conference either, and it can involve all sorts of features, including musical interludes, guest speakers, and particularly under AMLO, extended freewheeling presidential monologues, though Sheinbaum approaches it with her own, less folksy, more technocratic style. Regardless, it provides a pulpit for presidents and their ministers to push back against their critics, promote their successes, and set the news agenda for the day. So those are some of the reasons why Sheinbaum is popular. But the natural question that follows is this sustainable? If you're going to make the case for no, you might point to Brazil's former president Dilma Rousseff. Like Sheinbaum, she was the political heir of a popular leftist president, Lula da Silva, and went from being impressively popular during the early years of her term to facing immense unpopularity by the end of it. But we certainly shouldn't predict Sheinbaum's future based on this. Ultimately, Sheinbaum's future popularity will depend on how she reacts to the various expected and unexpected challenges that come her way, both inside and outside of Mexico. But as you know, the US-Mexico relationship is going through a turbulent time, and as such, there's plenty to read about it online. With this story on a water-sharing deal between the two countries, reported on by 211 sources. The issue is, how can you be sure that what you're reading isn't hugely biased? Well, that's a problem we face when making these videos too. And luckily, that's where this week's sponsor, Ground News, comes in. For this story in particular, they've identified that there are at least 18 left-leaning and 32 right-leaning sources reporting on it. In fact, in addition to this, they've also shown the main differences between the headlines from left and right-leaning outlets, with the left-leaning outlets generally highlighting the potential negative impacts on Mexico, while the right-leaning outlets emphasize the role of Trump's tariff pressure in securing the deal. We're able to do that because of our sponsor, Ground News, whose incredible website and app lets you discover the news and pulls back the curtain on media bias. That's because every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the source's reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. But one of the best parts of the app is their blind spot feed. It presents you with stories and articles that haven't been reported on by one side of the aisle or the other, helping you better break out of your media bubble and discover what those on the other side of the political spectrum are really saying. This is all in addition to the bias distribution we mentioned earlier, and together, these fantastic features help you to figure out exactly who's behind the stories you're reading, and what agenda they might have. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, and I think that an app like this will only become more essential as the media landscape continues to evolve. So if you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage plan by using the link in the description, or by scanning the QR code on screen. And this offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.